Hey guys, I'm with the Juff booth. He needs no introduction, but the short one, he is the entrepreneur, he's a visionary technologist, and of course, a Bitcoiner, and the author of the bestseller book, The Price of Tomorrow. Juff, how you doing?
Great to see you.
Thank you. So Juff, let's start this conversation. Let me ask you, what have you been up to like recently in the past like couple of months?
Besides too much travel, in Bitcoin Atlantis and then Mexico and New Zealand and everywhere.
Africa.
Yeah, Africa. The just spending a lot of time with portfolio companies at EgoDeath, and it. I got to tell you, it's just so exciting. I keep saying this on podcasts, but I can't believe I get to do what I get to do.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I just want to verify something. Preston Pish tweeted, I think, a few weeks ago that you got SIM swap. Is that true or no?
It's true.
You did.
Yeah. So don't follow me on Twitter. I don't know if I'll even be back there. Come follow me on Noster if you're listening to this. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to go back. And there's a couple of whys to that. So that SIM swap attack was my name is not on the account at my telco. In fact, it was taken off my account so I couldn't make changes to my phone because of the potential risk. So what that says, and then when we called, when my wife called, they said, no, Jeff came in and changed and we have his ID and everything. And then this was the fraud department. So the fraud department at the telco lied to us. And then when she called back and said, but how could he make that change? He's not authorized to make that change. And then, let me pass you to somebody else. And as she got bounced around, what we realized is this happened from inside the telco. It could only happen from inside the telco because they had to find where I was and then SIM swap me. And it might have happened at actually a pretty high level at the telco. And then in trying to get my Twitter account back, you realize how insecure and what Twitter is doing and how centralized services have to and will continue to steal your information and not help you. So Twitter and feels like Bell and Twitter. Here's an irony. My last tweet was a reply to somebody saying, "Go join Noster," and then I was SIM swapped. And so I don't want to wear a tinfoil hat and say what happened here, but my account, it seems like at a pretty high level was hijacked on both fronts.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate what happened. We can see the problems with these technologies. However, there is also a company, this is like non-sponsor, it calls Ifani. They basically guarantee like non-SIM swap a telephone provider. However, I also think they provide you with up to like $3 or $4 million guarantee if somehow you got SIM swap, they're gonna repay you all those damage if somebody like stole your crypto through your telephone provider.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah. Let's just go. So Ifani and I think Ifani is really great. CEO is great. Service is great. It's not available in Canada, and it might not be available in a whole bunch of other regions. So I can't use it here unless I go and get a U.S. phone, and then go to Ifani. Now, but even on that, I would just say any centralized service that you have to take your information into that's become centralized is an attack vector, and it's some sort of money, it's some sort of bribe becomes an attack vector. So I don't see that solution. I don't see building more and more centralized solutions as a solution to the problem. It's actually why people need to move their time over to Nostr. It's why people need to understand Bitcoin. Because if you think you're safe from this, you're not. And this is what I talk about in my book as well, is marginal cost, prices fall to the marginal cost of production in everything. The cost of AI is zero. So that means the attack vectors into these centralized services explode because there's so much, it's just a honeypot of your information. And it explodes in a whole bunch of different ways that most people have no idea how that's going to attack them. And I'm talking banks, I'm talking institutions. All of these things are going to be exposed. All of this information in these centralized services will be taken from you, and you will be cut off from them. And you need to, if you're not already in Bitcoin and Nostr, you need to move your time over to it as fast as possible.
Yep, I 100% agree with what you just said. But anyway, let's start maybe with economy. I just want to mention something that U.S. Federal tax revenue is roughly like 4.4 trillion for last year. The spending is roughly 6.1 trillion. So we can see deficits roughly like 35%, 40%. And of course, national debt, like I think it surpassed $34 trillion. And we still have to pay roughly more than $1 trillion to service our debt. What do you think is going on and what is happening?
Yeah, so nothing has changed from my thesis that I talked about in my book. It's just accelerating. So you have one, when I just said prices fall to the marginal cost of production, the free market is, the natural state of the free market is deflation. So just think through that statement, those 7 words or so, and say, and then don't let that go, right? So either the natural state of the market is deflation or it isn't. So first, spend some time on why is the natural state of the free market deflation. We vote with our time and our money to get more value. And if you do that, if you're not trying to get less value, and entrepreneurs are trying to solve problems for you to give you more value, then the natural output of that is deflation. And as you automate things with technology, the natural rate is exponential deflation. So that is the world you should live in. And that is a world where every year, everyone on this planet is getting richer, even if they're doing nothing. That's the world. That's even if they are doing nothing, if they're not productive, they're getting richer because prices are falling that fast. That's the world you should live in. You don't. You live in a world that we make up more monetary units and more debt to hide, to paper over, to essentially steal that productivity that should flow to society and concentrate it into some hands. And so I outlined this process in The Price of Tomorrow, and in the preceding 20 years, to kind of 1999 to 2019, we had an increase of debt of 185 trillion to increase the economy globally by 46 trillion. But that wasn't the part I was worried about. The part I was worried about is because technology was supposed to make making prices exponentially cheaper, then that exponential debt had to grow at the same offsetting rate or faster to be able to concentrate and steal that productivity faster in the future. So that was only 4 years ago. And now the debt, or the 185 trillion of additional in 20 years, took the total debt in the world to 250 trillion. So in 2019, we had $250 trillion of debt. Today, 4 years later, 4.5 years later from my book, you have debt of 400 trillion.
Almost double, yeah.
Yeah, in 4 years. So the preceding amount took 20 years, which was staggering compared to the 20 years before it. And this took 4 years. Coming in the next 4, the numbers are just truly so outstanding. So what it says, now try and pay back $400 trillion of debt. It would take, paying $1 a second, it would take 12,873,000 years. And so when you realize the magnitude of what I just said, if you are inside that system, pricing it from that system, whether it's in the US thinking, okay, their debt went to 34 trillion, or if it's in Lebanon, or if it's in Venezuela, if you're anyone inside that system talking about what Jay Powell is going to do, or anybody else is going to do, just realize you're inside the insolvent system. And nothing matters in there because your money has to be devalued at an increasing rate. And so you and your time are being stolen from at an crazy rate. And in Bitcoin, what's happening is it's just pricing that transition. So Bitcoin, you could look at Bitcoin price isn't going up. Bitcoin price is only going up to the people that are converting Bitcoin to their currency to price the world. But if you just think about in Bitcoin, my house has fallen from 300 Bitcoin to 20 Bitcoin in the last 4 years. In the next 4 years, it's going to drop from 20 Bitcoin to 2 Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is repricing everything.
Jeff, if you were saying this, are you saying that everything else is volatile versus Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is just a neutral system, or what?
So I think that, so yes, I am, but Bitcoin is, it would be hard to say a harsh statement or a hard statement that it's not volatile, because it is up and down. It's just early. I would venture to say there's far less than 1% of the people on the planet. There might be less than 10% of Bitcoiners that truly understand the magnitude of what I'm talking about, that truly understand that this is repricing everything, and it is the unit of measure. If it stays decentralized and secure, there is nothing that the existing system can do to stop this. Nothing. So they'll try to coordinate attacks on the second layer to suppress price. They'll try everything, to many things to be able to stop this. They'll try to control. There'll be tons of different events. But assuming it stays decentralized and secure, which the only reason I say if is so people do their own homework and understand it will, because it is repricing the world. And why now I go to, because look at the price in Lebanon, look at the price in Argentina, look at the price. And what you'll see is, if you zoom out on all of these different regions, you will see there's a whole bunch of people in those countries that also believe that their paper units price the world. And you'll see the volatility, you'll see all-time highs that are way higher than in Bitcoin than the pieces of paper that you're using to price the world in the US. You realize, that makes no sense at all. All of these people all over the world, when they're converting Bitcoin price to their currency to price everything else, it's illogical. It's completely illogical, because it's just a piece of paper that they know is devaluing, that they know is driving financial repression, but they're making it stronger with all of their actions within that system. And the more time they spend moving over to Bitcoin, with all of the essentially beautiful people building an alternative system, it's just expanding. And just when there is a truth like this in the world, why I'll go into a little bit of why it will stay decentralized and secure. There are too many people that know, for the first time in history, why decentralized and security matters so much, right? There might not have been enough people before that knew gold could be co-opted. Gold always was co-opted and repriced by the system. So Bitcoin changed that from gold to something totally different that the world has never seen. But now there's too many people. There's too many people like you. There's too many people like me that will not stop, cannot stop, that are not going to let this thing be, because our nodes control it. That will not allow, and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people fighting for this decentralized security, and more people that are starting to realize every day why this is important and why this changes humanity's from future, where we're going out of a centrally controlled system that is so broken and so extractive from you to something that's in service to you. And so once you understand that insight, you're not going to go back to the centralized control system.
Right. Jeff, let's circle back a bit. Yeah, you said there is roughly $400 trillion of global debt. Yeah, United States has high debt and other countries as well. But I remember very vividly Warren Buffett said a couple of years ago that you do not have to repay debt, you have to just service the debt. And so far, it seems like we are able to do that. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So you're taught. So again, when you ask that question, and without the could you pay back the debt at $1 a second for 12,873,000 years, then if you can, or say that if you can only service the debt by printing more money and diluting the purchasing power of money, then what is that economic system based on? And that economic system is based on theft. You don't have a vote in it. You don't have a vote. It's not a democracy because you don't have a vote in the rate of inflation. Or you could just insert, instead of inflation, rate of theft in your money. And remember, the natural state of the free market is deflation. And that means inflation rate shouldn't be measured from zero. It should be measured from the natural rate of deflation, which I would guess today in the market would be about, forget all the monetary nonsense, which I would guess would be about 5% per year, every person on this planet getting richer. And then as more and more people moved into that and technology moved faster, 10% per year, then 15% per year. So you'd have faster and faster deflation, which means your purchasing power goes farther and farther forever. And that would be the natural state of the world as all prices fall to the marginal cost of production. That, by the way, that is the natural state of the world if you're living in Bitcoin, if you're pricing in Bitcoin. It isn't. So that means the theft, if when people say I have 8% inflation, and we know that the inflation rate, to the measure of the inflation rate, is manipulated too, because 15, 20 years ago, that 8% would actually be a 20% inflation rate. It's not measuring the true inflation rate because that's measuring from zero. You should be measuring from the implied deflation rate. And now remember, you don't vote for it. You don't vote. It's not taxes. It's not this politician. All politicians, all political parties are on top of this theft. So then when you're voting, you're essentially saying who gets more of the spoils of the theft.
Right.
And that's why some of these questions from within the system, I don't even spend any more time on them. I can answer the question, fine, but I'm just so, it can't be fixed from the system. And most of you could drive a whole lot of views and in YouTube or Google or Twitter or anything else by yelling at other people within the system. Tons of views, right, left, climate change, no climate change, this person's bad. You can drive tons of views in that because everybody wants to believe they're right within the system. And here's the thing, within the system, they're all wrong. Everything. It can't be fixed. There's no fix from within the system. And magnitude, it has to be outside of the system to create a new system in parallel. And so when you're in Bitcoin and you understand that, you just think, I want to build the new system, the parallel system, as fast as possible, and allow people to understand that the more time they spend moving their time and energy from the old to the new, the happier they'll be.
Right. Yeah, it does make sense. So moving on to deflationary system, I just want to imagine how would life be there. So for me to get maybe richer in deflationary system, does that mean that my salary have to drop faster than the price of the goods and services?
No. So it's the opposite.
Oh, the opposite.
So it's quite the opposite. So we know why inflation works is because wages are sticky. And wages are sticky going up. So in other words, you don't get a wage increase as fast as inflation. The people closer to the money get more, and they only pay the people at the bottom when they have to. So you could just say inflation equals wage deflation from the same thing. It's both sides of the coin, right? So prices of goods and services are rising faster than wages. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. So, and that's because wages are sticky. So if wages are sticky, and that's a known economic fact, because people don't demand wage increases fast, and the company's in control, and you can automate their labor, so you can constantly suppress wages through the automation. So if that's true, then if wages are sticky, then they're sticky on the opposite as well. So that means your wage wouldn't fall as fast as prices are falling. It's a massive it's a massive increase. It's a massive take back of wealth from the extractors of wealth, from through this monetary system, to the producers of wealth.
That makes sense. Yeah, so if in the inflationary system my money buys tomorrow more than it does today, I think it will be very difficult to borrow money, because the interest rate would be quite high, because my money buys in the future more than it does today. What do you think, how that would work in the deflationary system?
So there'd be far less. Now, two things. I think when people are looking at all of these system changes, they think in light switch moments. So one day it looks like this, the next day it looks different. It doesn't, and I would say condition yourself to it doesn't look like that. It's a long, slow grind of transition with a whole bunch of people making miscalculations of what's happening. That's probably a better way to look at it. And that miscalculation is included in what debt looks like, because a lot of people will believe house prices will always stay high in fiat terms, and they'll take on debt, and that debt kind of in that to afford a house that is crazy priced. In time in Bitcoin, it'll be worth less and less Bitcoin. So that means that if you wait longer to buy your house, you're buying the house at the marginal cost of production of the house. It turns back into utility value rather than storing economic energy. But that whole debt explosion, some people losing, some people winning, some people selling their Bitcoin too early to buy a house, is going to be a long, slow transition as way less debt is required in a society on top of Bitcoin. Far, far less. Because if you're making that economic choice to put debt in, the real cost of the interest rate is way higher than you think, because you have to add the deflationary nature of what's happening in the market.
Right. How long do you think they can keep kicking this can down the road, increasing this debt system and just being this inflationary system?
So a long time. And think, why a long time? So right now, if you just look at all some of the major currencies, or Lebanon, Turkey, Egypt, Malawi, and that's not a major currency, but Argentina, Venezuela, what you're seeing is massive currency failures and a repricing. And those currency failures mean in the country, all of those people have their labor is way less, their raw materials cost way less. And they still believe in US dollars being worth more than their dollars. So they actually make the US dollar stronger by that belief. And then they get more and more debt or bailouts in US dollars and so that you can revalue the currencies again. And it forces those people's labor rate down lower, so you can extract from other people in the world faster, and it keeps the system in check for longer. This can go on for a long time. It can go on for as long as people believe and are stuck in that system. Now, the alternative in building alongside this is there's a lot of people in those countries as well that have ejected from that system and are now trading and earning in Bitcoin, and more people every day. So that system, and that's why the open, decentralized, secure network that Bitcoin is, that protocol, is unstoppable, because as people understand this and they can move their time and energy into something that can't be extracted from, they choose, and that network gets stronger. But if you just said, how long does this go on? And even from some of the questions that kind of you're asking, and I know you know this, but even some of the questions, most of these questions are from inside that system. That and that's what I say, even for many Bitcoiners, they're spending most of their time defending how long this existing system can look like, instead of spending the time building the new. And I don't take that as it's just, I just take that as an input to how long this can go on. It can go on as long as we're all deceived into believing it can go on, as long as we make that system stronger over us. And from when I look out at the world to how many people are making that system stronger over them by essentially playing prisoner's dilemma within the system, most people.
Right. Yeah, Charlie Munger once said, tell me the incentive, I tell you the outcome. And I think right now a lot of people stuck in this system because we are incentivized to do so. Like a lot of people can borrow money for like decent interest rates. And yeah, personally, I'm not doing it. My probably like 99% of liquid net worth is in Bitcoin. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be very difficult for people to move to other system.
Yeah, but it's happening. It's happening one by one, and person to person, and that's expanding. And some of these networks are coming together. So it is early, and in some countries and some regions, you're seeing faster growth, and then you're seeing these regions connect to other regions, and you're seeing faster growth, and that network effect is taking off. It's just early. So if you, I'm in Canada, most of my friends don't realize that. How do you spend Bitcoin every day? Because I spend Bitcoin every day, and I give an incentive to companies that would take Bitcoin. I want to spend with those companies, but most of my friends don't do that, and it seems hard. And they ask me, how do I do that? Because I'm like you. I spend most of my time and energy creating the world that I want to see. It's just I'm very aware when you go to the question on how fast, the timing is determined by us. The timing is determined by each of us and our actions. And like you said, most people don't realize that the incentives within the existing system that keep them there actually hurt them.
Yep, that's for sure. Let's move on. Yeah, actually, let me ask you another question within this system. Why do you think a politician and like American economist or whatever you want to call them, they incentivize to say that inflation is required for a productive society?
I honestly don't know if many of them even have done the work to understand that it isn't. So it's such a challenging thought because they've grown up in it. They were taught it. Their PhD thesis was on it. I can't. I think economics is super easy, actually, like super easy. It's just made to look hard, so that people won't ask the question because they don't think they're smart enough to ask the question. In economics, prices fall to the marginal cost of production. So prices fall because we create better and more value, and we use the things with more value, and we trade with each other all over the world. That's it. I think that's it. Everything else is a ruse to stop that. Stop that from happening. It's a control structure, and that means all political systems on top of that control structure are also control structures. If you ask somebody, I just got in this debate with a good friend of mine, actually two friends, one was very left, one was very right, and the right and both hated Bitcoin. hated it, and I'm going and they're yelling at each other about their political views, and I'm just almost interested. I'm laughing, but the person on the right was talking about free markets and capitalism and the works. I said, okay, so if we have insolvent debt and we let the natural market take place, as your house is falling from $3 million to 20 cents, and every bank is failing, at what point along that journey, and you can't, and there's no grocery stores because all the supply chains have collapsed, because the debt is all collapsed, and that's the entire market. At what point of that journey, if you believe in free markets, do you say stop, print more money? And after a long, awkward silence, he had nothing to say, because he doesn't believe in free markets. Because if he believed in free markets, if his actions were consistent with what he believed, he would say he just let it all fail. And he doesn't. He believes in markets that are constructed so that he wins because he has more assets.
Yeah, that's why how Federal Reserve was basically created. Prior to Federal Reserve, I think JP Morgan was bailing out banks during the recession, but then they decided to create Federal Reserve to bailing out everybody in crisis or events such like that.
Because fear, and this is happening today at a way greater scale. Fear is the ability to control people. So if you create fear in the market, then you can take more power to save them. And if the fear is created by the same thing, the money printing to drive this fear and the divide of society, and wars and the works, and then you need more control, you scare people. Right? And we need to protect you. Think of what we have. I've said this on many podcasts before, but think of what we have in regulation. We have regulation. Regulation is in service of a monopoly. It's not in service of you. The free market is in service of you. So you have regulation today to protect your money from a system designed to steal your money. How could that go wrong? Right? Like, think about it. All of the people, all of the cost, all of the nonsense about the regulators, they're on top of a system designed to steal your money. Then when you step back and you look at the world, of course it looks like giant control structures of the biggest companies in food, agriculture, medicine, war machine, all of them. They're just like they're very technology. There's only a small number of those companies that are all the beneficiaries of all of this. Why do you think you're getting so much fear about AI right now? Because prices fall to the marginal cost of production, and that means a line of code created by other lines of code is free. And there is no economic model on free. So how do the big AI companies need to create an economic model? They need to scare you to death that they're protecting you, so they can be regulated, so it can regulate it, so they can extract and create the monopoly. That's what it looks like. So all of this is not in service of you, but people fall for it all the time through fear. Greater fear drives control.
Yeah, fear. People like lots of mainstream medias. They just want to get some clicks through fears, and the same with politics. As you said, politics is just a theater. It doesn't make any difference who wins, who does what.
It's theater. It's literally theater, and I can't believe people spend so much time on the theater. And it was, if you want to watch theater, great, go ahead, but don't get so emotional about it.
Yeah, I'm 100% agree with that. Juff, so let's move on. You mentioned in your book about the power of compounding. As Albert Einstein was said that power of compound is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it, use it. He who doesn't, lose it. Also, you have an example with the folding piece of paper. Maybe you can mention that. Explain that.
Yeah, so I just, because this exponential power and technology and Moore's law, and and technology typically moves in S curves rather than exponential. It only looks exponential in that exponential phase. But let's use the exponential phase as an example. In technology in Moore's law, essentially a doubling of compute for half the price every 18 months or 2 years, going back for a long time now. You can see if you predict that rate of growth versus the linear rate of growth, you can see everything else. And most people, I would say, are not predicting that rate of growth. They're predicting a linear rate of growth, and that's why they're so surprised when AI does something crazy. And they're going to be more surprised when it does something crazy next year, because how did this come out of the blue when it didn't come out of the blue? So what I use as an example on that is a piece of paper folding. And if you could fold a piece of paper 50 times on itself, just a normal 8.5 by 11, if you could fold it 50 times, you can only fold it 7 times. But I ask to audiences all over the world, how thick would that piece of paper be on fold 50? And most people answer about 2 inches, when in fact that piece of paper would reach from here to the sun. So, and when people get that, they immediately tell others, and they look it up on Google, and they say, oh, wow, and now they know the parlor trick. But then they get fooled right away when it's underlying that technology, that rate of growth is underlying everything we're doing today. So they can't see it in their daily life. They think they know the pattern, but it tricks it so hard to think in exponentials. And now if you compare those paper folds to the exponential rate of technology, we're on fold 35, going to fold 36. So now we're on the super steep steps. So the rate of growth, and now extrapolate that to AI. AI has had the exact same rate of growth since the 50s. Exact same rate of growth. But people are measuring it linearly, and it's moving exponentially. And so when you see what that rate of growth is and what happens next, so I feel like I'm not, people are surprised because they're watching a frame of the movie instead of watching the entire movie. And if you're watching the entire movie on the right on the right growth rate, you can see where this takes us really easily. And you can also see why something like Bitcoin is critical in taking us to a prosperous, abundant future. Because the existing path, that means that those prices, everything denominated by that, should fall at an exponential rate. And it means the system you live in and you measure everything from has to extract more from you at an exponential rate. And as it extracts more from you at an exponential rate, and you get mad because you're feeling like I can't keep up, then it has to control you at an exponential rate.
Yeah, 2 to the power 50 minus 1, that's a humongous number.
Yeah.
And Juff, so let's move on. Let's talk about a bit a blockchain trilemma, as you mentioned many times. Can you explain that again, please?
Sure. A blockchain can do 2 of 3 things on its layer: decentralization, scalability, and security. But you have to pick 2 of 3. So Bitcoin chose decentralization and security. So the first time in history that we ever had something decentralized and secure. And so that would be, assuming it could do that and stay decentralized and secure, and the way it was created allowed that to happen, then you could imagine how would you compete with Bitcoin if it was the first time in history that something was decentralized and secure? How would you create an alternative to Bitcoin and solve the blockchain trilemma? So let's just use the 3 different examples to be able to compete with it. One, it's just open source code. Everybody can see the code. You could just create another Bitcoin, another type of Bitcoin with the exact same thing, like Dogecoin, for instance, right? and by very nature, so it would have the exact same utility, decentralization and security, but it would have less decentralization and security because it came later. So why would anybody use the thing with less decentralization and security and the same exact utility? And the answer is no one would use it over time. The winner with more and more decentralization and security would keep winning, and the loser might win for a tiny time, but then would fail over time. So how else would you create value? You would say, okay, if Bitcoin has decentralized and security, but it has to sacrifice scalability to be able to achieve that. So it can only do 5 to 7 transactions per second on the base chain. Then we're going to offer scalability. And we're going to, and this is where Ethereum and a whole bunch of the bigger blockchains came in to be able to try to solve scalability on the first layer. And so we're going to be a world computer where Ethereum was. And we're going to charge scalability. But remember, they have to sacrifice security or decentralization. So in Ethereum's case, they sacrificed decentralization, and you have a centralized blockchain with the economic nodes or making the decisions for everybody else. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, I get that. But if you have a centralized blockchain, and a blockchain is just a high-cost database, why wouldn't I just use a database? Right? Why would I use a blockchain? There's no long-term incentive. There's no long-term possibility that could work. Now, I understand that there are a whole bunch of actors, both entrepreneurs and others, would believe it could work and would build their businesses onto quicksand, thinking that it could work. But that's what ends up happening. And so for a while, it looks like it could work. But then over time, those changes as that centralization needs to happen, need to penalize some of those businesses building on top of it too. And the thing fails eventually. So that's what, and then you start to ask yourself, how could you have decentralized finance on top of a centralized blockchain? Similar to regulation on top of a system to be able to, regulation to protect your money on top of a system designed to steal it. These things are incompatible. They can't work. And just the economics of a system would make sure that they can't work over time. So that would tackle Ethereum and many of the other blockchains. And then you have, on the other side of that, then you have Solana and others that sacrifice security to be able to scale. And so each of these makes trade-offs to something to be able to scale, and those trade-offs mean they can't be a base layer for society. Where Bitcoin made that trade-off against scalability, and it works more like a protocol. And so you have base layer that is an open, decentralized, and secure protocol bounded by energy that creates more energy abundance by its very nature as it chases more cheap and abundant energy. That becomes a base layer, and then it scales in layers, just like the internet scaled in layers. And each layer has a different functionality without sacrificing the layer below it. So Lightning is a layer of a transaction network that adds scalability to Bitcoin. It comes in layer 2, and then each 10 minutes comes back to aggregates all of those transactions, and then it comes back down to the base layer. And so that's how you get scalability out of a protocol like that. It comes in layers, similar to the internet. But I'd just like to highlight why that's so hard to see for people. We see far more often company success than we do broad-based technologies. So we see far more companies than we do, let's say, electrification or AI. Way more companies are. And then very, very rarely do we see protocols. And protocols change everything. So if we don't see them very often, if we see more companies and then we see technologies, then it would be really easy to fool us into this company or this token is the better one, or this broad-based part of a blockchain is a better one, because humanity doesn't see protocols very often. They come very rarely. And Bitcoin should be looked at as a protocol rather than a technology or a
Yeah,
company.
that makes a lot of sense. Jeff, maybe you can help me understand, because if I look at this blockchain trilemma, it does not really make too much sense to me because, for example, if Bitcoin chose decentralization and security, it's secure because it is decentralized. When it's decentralized, there's no single point of failure. But for example, Ethereum, if it chooses scalability, if it chooses security, it would have to be decentralized by default. It cannot, like, I don't think it can choose security without decentralization. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think that's right. I think they solve so 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 Ethereum is centralized, and you can prove this. Otherwise, they couldn't have made a change to all of the people, and they couldn't made a unilateral change. They couldn't have done their update. They wouldn't have a software update type of roadmap. It is centralized by very nature. Otherwise, it would have forked, and you would have had and the community would have voted which one worked. They penalized the community to do that. So it is centralized.
So if it's centralized, it must be non-secure then, right?
So it can be secure for a while as long as you trust
Right.
those actors, right?
Single point of failure, yeah.
Exactly. Eventually, it becomes insecure, or a state attack because you shut down the servers on Amazon, or there's a certain number of people that you can go to. So yes, you're right. Eventually, that fails through the centralization as well.
Right. Okay, let's move on, Jeff. I'm gonna hate to say it. I'm gonna ask you another question from this system. What do you think about Bitcoin spot ETFs?
No, I think that's actually I think that's a great question. I just think it is a giant funnel, a giant marketing funnel, and a bunch of the people that are just learning about Bitcoin now will become Bitcoiners like you and I, and they'll move from understanding it, getting a return on it that they are pricing in fiat dollars, to starting to be curious and listening to your podcast and doing other things, to eventually going down the rabbit hole farther and farther to where they spend more of their time in self-custody, decentralization, security. And so it's a giant marketing funnel that is highlighting some of the risks of of the existing financial system. And a bunch of those is you're going to mint a whole bunch of new Bitcoiners.
Do you think it creates more risk because we have essentially one custodial and then probably gonna build some derivatives on top of that?
So it's a risk for those people. It's not a risk for me or you.
Yeah.
And that's why I say some of those people are going to get burned through this. Anytime you're centralizing, a bunch of those people, they're unfortunately going to get burned. And probably not in the same way FTX burned them, but the similar type of thing. And a bunch of those people will mint new Bitcoiners, so they'll understand through that process. If you're talking about the risk of essentially layer twos, I would coordinate that attack vector in a different way. I would say a bunch of layer twos plus ETFs plus coordination around non-custodial wallets from the state and saying it's illegal to do this. You could view that as a massive state attack to try to suppress price through layer twos. Because you can't attack, you've lost control of, you can't win against Bitcoin because it's decentralized and secure. So you could say, and we see a lot of this, I see a lot of this. I'm not going to put a tinfoil hat on and say what it is looking like, but you can see a pretty coordinated response around how much money is flowing into layer twos to be able to potentially suppress Bitcoin price through derivatives on layer twos eventually. It won't work. Those layer twos are they're very immature compared to where Lightning is already scaling. Like, so when people say Lightning doesn't scale, I use it every day. It's grown 1,200% in the last 2 years. It's growing. It's extraordinarily fast, and it's becoming the superhighway network to other things like Fediment, which will drive scaling in a different way. So but I do see as well what you're saying. There is a very behind the scenes kind of tons of money racing at crazy valuations on all of this essentially kludgy mess, just with a whole bunch of inside attack vectors on Lightning to say it doesn't scale and my thing works better than that thing. Right, that's what you're getting right now. Because if you could control Bitcoin from layer 2, you could make Bitcoin look like gold.
Yeah. Jeff, what do you use? Strike? What app do you use?
For which?
For Lightning Network.
I use Breeze.
I will check it out. Jeff, so I guess we are coming to the end. Well, one last question. How do you see Bitcoin as a neutral system between deflationary and inflationary systems?
It's just your measuring viewpoint. So I've said this on multiple podcasts. So forgive
Measuring
if you've
stick,
heard that.
yeah.
So if you were an executive at Amazon versus Sears in '95, and you're an executive at one of those two companies, in Amazon you would have seen things are getting better and better and better, and in Sears you'd see everything's getting worse and worse and worse. Now, that's not a good enough example because Bitcoin's such a bigger, it's tied to everything. But just use that as an example. If you're in Bitcoin, you're going to see all prices falling forever, and your world is going to get better and better and better. It's going to feel like that. And as you meet more Bitcoiners, and you meet more people that are starting to understand this, and the curiosity and the intensity and how what you find how great some of these people are in this network, you'll see it everywhere, and you'll realize we were meant to be together and contribute to each other's success. That's what it looks like, and it gets better and better. If you live in the other world and you're measuring from the other world, it's going to get worse and worse and worse, and it's going to divide, and you're going to feel like you're right by dividing against that other person. And you're going to get more mad, and you're going to be more upset, and that's it. And just realize that you have a choice. It's just your view of the world. It's not the world. It's your view of the world is a reflection of what system you're looking through.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. As Thomas actually said about the view of the world, he said the world is as real as it is in your head, basically. But it's true, but everybody can have a different view of the world, so I guess it doesn't make it real. But Jeff, so lastly, where can people find you online?
Find me on Nostr. That's the best place because of these SIM swap attacks and everything else. I don't even know if I will go back to Twitter, but I'm spending more of my time on Nostr. And if you want to find my pub key, go to my website, jeffbooth.ca, and I'll always keep that updated for any site I'm on, whether it's LinkedIn or if I go back on Twitter, but if my name isn't on specifically where I am on that site, then it's not me. There's just so many scammers out there.
Thank you so much, and I will leave all the links in the description box below. Thank you so much for doing this, Jeff.
Thank you. Great talking.